This podcast is brought to you by the OBSBot Meet 2 4K AI webcam. Moore's Law said uses OBSBot webcams, and so we can't recommend them enough. Check them out in the links in the description. And then it is also brought to you by cdkeyoffer.com. Use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software. We'll talk about both of these sponsors later, but for now, let's just get on with the show. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today I am joined by my co-host,
Dan.
I should have said barely growing in beard Tom, so that you could announce clean-shaven Dan. You are now clean-shaven again, and this will throw everyone off.
As clean-shaven as I tend to be. I shaved.
As you bother to be.
As I shaved 2 days ago. So by boomer standards, I am not clean-shaven at all, but
you're practically a hippie in some circles.
But I decided the winter is over. Time to get rid of the beard.
Now we have an update
long
here.
Enough.
I don't remember if this is on the last Die Shrink or the Broken Silicon you were on. We had an update that there was a blizzard coming to Minnesota. How did the blizzard go?
There was a kind of a blizzard, but it was basically above freezing the entire time, so it immediately melted.
The Midwest slush blizzard. Those are always fun.
Yes, the fun end of March period where everything is just damp for 2 weeks.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's been generally pretty nice down here. As Nashville as usual. This is one of my favorite things to do, is to start the podcast with you saying the weather sucks and me going, it's nice here. I don't know.
Nashville.
I'm Tom. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess besides that, are things going well?
Suppose, yeah. Getting warmer. Excited.
I'd say the same. It is that time of year where it's like, it is time for it to be warmer now, even though in 2 months we will want it to be cold again. It's like the brief period where you're like, it's enough of the winter, enough.
Yes,
please.
Yes.
But okay. This is supposed to be a gaming hardware podcast, and we are talking about the weather. No opening reader mails, no corrections. Remember, join the Moore's Law as Dead Patreon. You can submit corrections if you want to. So I think we will just get into the first. Well,
which means I have to proudly declare we were perfect for the last 2 weeks then.
Yep. Never any mistakes. Go to Reddit. They will disagree to a seemingly unhealthy degree with that, some people. But let us move on then for the first story here. Story number one, Radeon RX 9070 XT supply and demand updates. So GPU supply remains a hot topic as shortages continue to send gamers in need of an upgrade into despair. So we all know you want this. Let's summarize the current situation again. First of all, the initial launch supply of the RX 9000 series, some applauded the significant volume, especially for a company that's used to supplying like 10 to 30% of the market. Others scoffed at how small really is at a global scale, given that there have been GPU droughts for months now, as last gen was cut off entirely. It was cut off early, some might say prematurely. And Nvidia, which usually supplies most of the market, seems to be treating gamers as a side hustle. Both views are correct, though. And just to put a note on this, I distinctly remember that Polaris was a little over 200,000 GPUs, I believe, somewhere between there and 300,000 at launch. I remember sources telling me the RTX 3070 was like a little over 100,000 at launch. 4090, which had tons of launch supply for a high-end GPU, was below 200,000. So this was a large launch, but I wouldn't say this is the largest one AMD has done. Most of the shortages, therefore, really are Nvidia not supplying enough cards. But I just wanted to give that as a frame of reference for everybody. So still, as Moore's Law said, sources and AIBs themselves confirmed in a recent video, grass is ironically greener over at Team Red, with frequent restocks which seem to be improving both in size and regularity. And Nvidia has also started shipping more cards regularly, but still, our sources, again, in a recent video, this was disclosed, AMD is still shipping 2 to 4 times as many cards a week as Nvidia is. Hopefully, Nvidia supply continues to improve. As well, Blackwell isn't impressive. AMD just cannot supply the entire market. And with demand so significantly higher than supply, prices are going to go up and stay up. And we don't need another reason for price increases to add to all the other problems like tariffs, shipping chaos caused by the tariffs, and general economic uncertainty. For now, Nvidia has left the door open to AMD, even in markets where Radeon had very little presence and support. In Japan, for example, where I'm told Nvidia dominates, by the way, 95% of the market, AMD's claiming 45% market share in the past couple months, which is nuts for what would be like 95%. Same in China. They just buy Nvidia there, which is an incredible number in a usual Nvidia or bus market. Meanwhile, a leak I have here for you all today. I actually spoke on the phone for an hour with a source that told me, I'm just going to quote here, right now, this is a major AIB, international, not just one region, one of the biggest AIBs. We all probably bought products from them. Said, we are offering RTX 5080s to retail customers for $1,400 right now before markup. And they are still buying them because we are warning them things could get much worse. At a minimum, this person expects GPU prices to remain over 35% above MSRP for the foreseeable future. And if the USA's Section 301 exemptions end in June for this AIB, which they believe right now they are on course to, they expect prices to climb over 60% above MSRP in June. And again, this is an AIB that doesn't just make graphics cards. So that would go for their motherboards, laptops, everything else they make into the United States. This is also something that Gerard can show on screen. I looked this up. Yes, this is a thing. This is a thing, the Section 301 that is supposed to end in June and could send prices up that much. And in addition to that, I was also pointed to Power GPU basically publicly saying the same stuff, that from distributors, Power GPU is getting RTX 5090s for over $3,000 before markup for their pre-builds. So
Jesus.
no, when you see, again, this is something I keep trying to make clear. When you see a 5090 for 3,000, 3,500 on Newegg did not just double the price. Like, they are making like $100 on selling that thing maybe. And this is just what the prices are. I'm directly told it's because of tariffs and supply issues. And it's going to stay that way unless something changes, and it could get a lot worse. Which I would expect something to happen, because I can't see that going over well in the United States if half of electronics go up 60, 70% in price. But who knows? Worse things have happened in the past.
Yeah. I mean, this is all weird. Like, because I really don't know what to recommend at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if this is going to be a temporary thing and prices are going to return to around where they are now. But I guess that is my best bet, is maybe things will be around where they are now. Maybe they'll go up 30% in the next 2 months. So, I mean, the initial launch of the 9070 and 9070 XT was great if you could get it then. But I don't know. Like, I think you can get a 9070 XT. The cheap models are still going for like, what, $750 or something?
Sometimes, yeah.
I guess that might be the best we have for a long time, which even with decent supply.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of those things where I didn't want to be right, but me and you, Dan, warned everybody, these prices are they're going to go up a lot more. This is the train. It's leaving the station. Things are out of your control. If you need a high-end GPU, this is the one to get right now. I do not expect things to get better. And it doesn't just seem we are right about that. So far from what I'm hearing, we may have undersold how bad things could get.
Yep. We might see what 60% above MSRP. That means the 5070 Ti, 9070 XT, all of those will possibly go. A lot of those will have models go above $1,000. Like, it's unfortunate, and hopefully it doesn't happen for that long, but this is where we're at.
Well, yeah, and here's something, like, it's climbing too. Like, I am told that, like, and I quoted this here from an AIB, but I'm hearing this also from retailers, that like they are being quoted right now $1,400 to $1,500 for a lot of these 5080s. And then they're being told it's going to go up more. So we'll get to this in the wrap up. There is basically, it seems that MSI accidentally, or who knows, intentionally confirmed that they're launching 24 gigabyte 5080s soon. I mean, if they're I think we might get to a situation where the 5090 is $3,000. There's a 5080 24 gigabyte for $2,000, and then the 5080 16 gigabyte is $1,500. That then 5070 Ti is $1,000 or more,
Mhm.
and then 9070 XT might be $800, but sometimes 700. I think that's what we should expect. And if this again Section 301 stuff happens, I don't know. I
Yeah,
honestly don't know what's going to happen.
yeah. If all of those tariffs go into effect, I mean, I don't know. Just add what 20% to all of that at least, probably. Like,
Everything I just said, add another 30 or 40. I
crossing my
was on the
fingers.
phone for an hour today because I was like, tell me again. Tell me exactly like so again, and on top of that, and it's like, yes, and it is this bad. So I know how crazy that sounds. I hope I'm wrong, but I just again, the way I would take it is I'm not sure if that Section 301 exemption will expire. Maybe they'll extend it. I suspect they might, but that's
Mhm.
the best case scenario, and we still expect things to be over 30% above MSRP. Some people are telling me 50% moving forward, even if this doesn't happen. So we just report the news. It's bad news, but I do know this is what people are mostly interested in right now. So I thought we had to open this episode with whatever we could gather on this information, right?
Yeah, and all I really have to say is I don't know. I just think things might keep getting worse for the foreseeable future. And I kind of think the best case scenario is things stay
Where
at
they are.
where they are.
Or
Yeah,
even
or
honestly, best case might be things might get 10% worse than now, but stay there.
sure. And unless Nvidia sneak attack floods the market in the next week or something, which I would applaud, but
Sure.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and if it's 8 GB cards, as we'll get to, I don't know if anyone will care. AIMeable Chief writes in and says, is AMD reconsidering selling 9070 XTs through its own online store, even if in limited quantities, to help move stock at MSRP? No. In fact, I literally got a hold of someone that was in the decision-making room when they went for how they were going to price and market RDNA 4. And I was told by this individual that this was a very deliberate part of AMD's strategy. Like there's a deliberate move to make MSRP mean what it actually is supposed to mean, and just try to control some of the supply as best they can while allowing AIBs to get on AMD's good graces. This
Mhm.
is the new normal. A lot of this person I talked to thinks this is how it probably should have been. And I was directly told there's no plans at all to sell from AMD's store. And without doing that, they can't really affect anything. But then this person also said, but we can't anyways. Like if Nvidia is not going to supply the market, then us selling from AMD.com won't really affect MSRP either. It only works if Nvidia keeps the supplying as much as we expect, so that this is a reasonably noticeable release valve. I mean, but if AMD is supplying the whole market, 10% of MSRP, I don't know how much that changes.
Yeah, I mean, having some amount of stock at MSRP
Which they are still
i-
trying to do that, but
is great, but to be we're kind of in a situation where demand outweighs supply so much.
that
Why? Like, not that I wouldn't love it, but why would they do that?
right. And again, they're not Nvidia. Can they even do that?
Yeah.
But all right, let us now clip along here
Mhm.
to story number 2, which I think is a much more cheerful story.
Hmm.
Sony backporting FSR 4 to PS5 Pro, which is a huge deal for RDNA 3 and 3.5. Quoting here from Digital Foundry / Eurogamer. The neural network and training recipe in FSR 4's upscaler are the first results of the Amethyst collaboration, Cerny told us. And results are excellent. It's a more advanced approach that can exceed the crispness of even current PSSR, and they are very proud of the work of the joint team. Cerny believes that the PS5 Pro's machine learning hardware is up to the task of running FSR without a significant re-architecting as well. That is what we are targeting, he goes on, and we believe we can achieve it. The peak performance number for the PS5 Pro is 300 8-bit tops without sparsity, which compares very well to recently released AMD GPUs. RDNA 4 and the hardware in PS5 Pro are completely separate designs, which is why I speak in terms of re-implementation on PS5 Pro when I talk about the new upscaling network used in FSR 4. He goes on, I'm definitely looking forward to a future with co-developed hardware features for machine learning that will dramatically increase the interoperability. So yes, in an extensive interview with Digital Foundry, Mark Cerny finally showed his and AMD's cards a little when it comes to Project Amethyst. We now know FSR4 was part of Amethyst, starting development proper as PSR was when PSSR was wrapping up. So it was part of the development, but a separate project started when PSSR was done, which is interesting to me. So that just tells you Sony was so ahead of them in a new machine learning upscaler. But anyways, that was late 2023. Sony also confirmed FSR4 will come to PS5 Pro, that this reimplementation will be the next evolution of it with a different name, possibly PSSR2, same engine under the hood. This bolsters hope for RDNA 3 versions of FSR4, as PS4 Pro also lacks FP8 compute. That seems to be key for RDNA 4's AI upscaler. We should still keep in mind significant performance differences as well. The PS5 Pro does 300 int 8 tops, but even the 7900 XTX does only 250 tops. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that does show you Sony really did choose a different way of doing it, but did put more hardware than even RDNA 3 had. So it isn't RDNA 3. Still, if it will work on Sony's console, it will work on RDNA 3. It just might take a little longer to optimize to perform well. And again, Cerny, and I believe him, the guy seems to be right when he says things like, I believe they will get FSR to work at least 95% as well on the PS5 Pro. But then my guess is that will come to the RDNA 3, and instead of giving you that 30% boost, 20% or something. But still, that's not nothing.
Yeah. I mean, yes, Cerny, I guess, is Sony's tech guy. Like I don't know. I think it's funny for the past 10 years, just we need somebody to talk about our tech, bring out Cerny. I guess he's just a really, really good engineer, though. But yeah, I mean, I'm very excited to see an implementation of FSR4 come to RDNA 3, which, like as we've discussed before, kind of feels like it has to happen given how much of their hardware is RDNA 3 based right now.
Oh, yeah. We keep talking about this. Again, think of how big of a win this would be. Like, first of all, I think they have to do it. Strix Halo and Strix Point will be sold for a long time. I think especially Strix Point will probably be rebranded. On top of that, it's clear they're going to keep using Hawk Point and a refresh of that, and then Escher and Kraken. These are all things that do not use RDNA 4 that they will rebrand and sell for like 4 more years. It'd be insane for them to not have that. And then if you think about how much of a win this would go all the way back to Phoenix. I mean, when did that come out? 23, I think, right? Phoenix,
yeah.
Hawkpoint was 24. Yeah. There's just so many generations in such a short amount of time. So like you would have everything from AMD 2023 and later, so 2 years ago and moving forward, that can support this feature. That's a huge win for, again, not just the fans that already bought this stuff, but for the ability to keep selling stuff. You don't want to be a situation where someone's looking at an old Phoenix HP laptop and they don't buy it because they don't think it can do anything modern, when it can if they just put in the effort.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you're comparing like AMD's to Nvidia's approach right now, where AMD is selling supporting things for several generations, and Nvidia basically is only supporting one right now. Yeah, having that be able, or having some aspects of it at least be able to be back portable is essential. And I'm very curious to see the comparisons to Pisser and Pisser 2 / FSR4.
Yes, we'll see if they change the name with PS6, right? I guess that's another thing to watch, is what Sony does with this moving forward. Do they say, no, we think Int 8 or whatever is how we're going to keep doing this? And PlayStation 6 is like some weird UDNA variant that doesn't care about FP8 and just uses Int 8 for upscaling. I guess we'll have to see. I would guess they'd probably migrate to the newer one. I don't know how hard that would really be, but I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Sony definitely is fine with doing the whole taking the semi-custom thing to its maximum. So who knows? But I do think to some extent, you know, being more similar to what AMD is currently putting out would be helpful for developing their algorithms, at least.
Lucy Mon writes in, says Mark Cerny, when talking about the PS5 Pro, said that their GPU is more of an RDNA 2.x affair with a better node and various features backported. Can any of your sources figure out if there is any material difference between desktop GPUs and the Pro? Yes, there is. Better power consumption, ray tracing, or is it mostly back-end stuff to make devs' lives easier? Some of that. that doesn't materially impact user experience. I mean, it's all of the above. And I don't know if you especially go back to the stuff we put out on Moore's Law is Dead in like 2022 through 23, like we really got into some interesting analysis, even 24, of like what Sony did with their implementations of Zen 2, where they clearly stripped out a lot of the compute features of Zen 2, but then made it so it was like both more dense than it would normally be with Zen 2. I
Mhm.
don't remember. There was some analysis put out on Twitter that basically showed they gained 20-30% density with no loss in gaming performance. But then also by stripping out some compute features, it was denser, but they were able to take that smaller space and space things out more so that the thermal density wasn't actually as bad as also desktop Zen 2.
Hmm.
Again, a Zen 2 implementation that is only for gaming. I can't tell you everything they did with the PS5 Pro. I can tell you that should give you an idea of the type of stuff they do. Another one was a lack of I keep forgetting this lately. This is a thing, not mesh shaders, something with like shaders or something, asynchronous shaders. I don't remember what it was. But like the Xbox Series X is very good at that because they have extra compute features because it works as a server APU. And AMD stripped out a lot of that stuff that does have performance hits in some games like Alan Wake 2, but only like apparently a 10% one because they thought devs were wasting too much time trying to optimize this way to optimize the game. And that if we just streamline the geometry engine, that will make up for it. And I've had developers tell me it pretty much works. So some games take a performance hit versus the Series X. And if they really are
Yeah.
leveraging it that hard, again, there's another example. So, what did they do? I mean, don't think of, even though they're going to say, well, if you notice with PS5 Pro, they haven't said the RDNA architecture it is. They kind of are moving away from bragging about RDNA 3 or 4 or whatever. That's because all of these Series X actually, I believe, has more compute features than normal RDNA 2. PlayStation 5 has a custom cost optimized version of Zen 2 and a little bit more stripped down compute version of RDNA 2. PS5 Pro seems like it took some features of RDNA 3.5 and 4, beefed
Mhm.
those up, didn't take other features, and still organized the GPU like it's RDNA 2. They're all custom architectures.
Yeah, and I do just think the language he uses spells it out that this isn't just an main or a an application of one of AMD's own internal architectures or variants. Because I don't know, calling it a 2.x affair is almost downselling it a little bit. Instead of saying it's not RDNA 3 or 4, it's RDNA 3.3 or whatever you could say.
Yeah. So yeah, I think again, this is a very interesting space. I'm excited to see where these things develop. In 2 months, we'll probably be doing the same thing with the Switch 2, where we'll be arguing over how much of an ampere plus it is versus normal ampere. But yeah, a lot of companies make gaming hardware, not just for desktop GPUs. So let us now move on to story number 3. AMD Soundwave specs leaked. Quoting from the video that I put out a week ago. For those who don't remember, this channel debunks rumors suggesting Soundwave was a Zen 6 APU, and they exclusively leaked that, in fact, what the Soundwave was actually a new ARM APU, not some x86 Zen 6 one, coming to do battle with Qualcomm's chips almost a year ago. Soundwave is an ARM APU, therefore, currently taping out on TSMC 3 nanometer. It aims to target 5 to 10 watt form factors and therefore seems like a successor to Mendocino, targeting a 2026 launch. The specifications include 2 P cores and 4 E cores with a small 4 megabytes of L3 cache. And the fact is that just these 6 cores on 3 nanometer, this is going to be very good for battery life. And then it will also have 4 RDNA 3.5 CUs. And this is the interesting part, with improved machine learning. Don't know what exactly, but it might be able to run the newer version of FSR 4. I don't know. We'll see. This APU has also been enhanced with 16 megabytes of mall cache for gamers. That's basically infinity cache. Again, interesting that this gets the same amount of infinity cache as the 6500 XT got. Meanwhile, Strix Point didn't get any. Seems like there's probably well, actually, let me get into what I think by reading this too. It will also have fourth gen AI engine and 120-bit LPDDR5 X9600 memory controller. And it's like, wow, 16 megabytes of mall cache, 128-bit 9600 controller. Like, so way more bandwidth than Strix, despite having a GPU at least probably like a fourth the performance. My suspicion is they just took an IP block that they're just going to use across several products, and that moving
Oh, sure.
forward, their memory controllers have mall cache. They just do. But also be to feed the AI engine. But I don't know how else you explain why they would be giving so much bandwidth to 4 compute units. Anyways, after revealing the Medusa family, therefore, we can now confirm specs of Soundwave, which, yeah, let me skip some of this. I'm basically just re-summarizing, but there is a lot of cause of for excitement with this chip because the chip will have a lot of bandwidth and a lot of cache for its CPU and GPU thanks to the dual channel LPDDR5X and of course inclusion of Infinity Cache. But there are still many ifs. If Windows on ARM actually works on Soundwave and it performs as it should? This could be a great entry-level APU, but it really is a big if, one that would put Qualcomm to shame if it turned out ARM on Windows wasn't the issue. Qualcomm on Windows was the issue, but with a very small die size, making it cheap. I think I estimated it cost half as much to make as a Strix Point APU, and then you could probably make 2 to 3 of them in capacity. So that's also interesting to me. And yeah, I think it would allow long battery lives on even cheap devices with cheap batteries. So here we go, Dan. What do you think of Soundwave?
I mean, it looks like it's a budget APU, or hell, this could even go in. This could be for non-Windows devices too. I don't know. This is using ARM small power, low TDP, pretty small. Like I don't know. We'll see where this goes. I mean, if it ends up in Windows, I'm very, like you said, very curious to see how it stacks up against Qualcomm. But even if it does, I don't know. This will go into like what, $600 laptops?
Oh, I think
think
400.
Yeah, or like Chromebooks. I could see it being in tablets. Like I don't know. I mean, it's not like I don't think AMD is taking a two-prong flagship CPU approach, obviously, but yeah, this looks like a potentially good budget CPU with a lot of different applications.
Again, if ARM on Windows works with this, it's if it does. But if it does, I think this seems like a much more balanced and useful chip than Qualcomm's X Elite. The X Elite was a weird chip. Like I've talked to sources at Intel and AMD, like how important is ARM? Like I keep seeing some people hype it up, like ARM magically doubles your efficiency, and it's crazy we use x86, and they all basically say that's not true. If that was true, we would be using ARM right now. ARM gives you a notable efficiency boost below 10 watts, but it's below 10. Even below 20, you start to lose it. Below 45, which the X Elite targeted, it doesn't really show any more efficiency than the competition, not in some huge appreciable amount. And so it's kind of odd, in my opinion, that Qualcomm targeted directly competing with Strix Point. Like, why not make something cheaper? But again, I think it's because Microsoft wanted the first Copilot NPUs that I don't think Copilot even uses yet still. So stupid, to be seen as premium devices. That's why they forced them to use these expensive chassis and screens with something that was only ever really going to make sense in budget. And that's why I like this is the die size will be like a third smaller than the X Elite, while offering, maybe similar single threading, maybe half the CPU performance and similar GPU, except it will work. But that's much more important to me. Like, give me something that I would estimate with all the small cache and stuff is like Steam Deck level or better performance. Not like the terrible Mendocino 2 compute unit performance. Although it's impressive for just having 2 compute units if you look at benchmarks, to be honest. And give me something that 6 cores is enough, has all day battery life, and can be put in a $400 device, because that is the only place where I think ARM is going to make sense. And if it goes well, I mean, look, you'll have $400 devices that have 12-hour or 16-hour battery lives that can play every AAA game in 720p. That sounds awesome to me.
Or maybe they should try to clock this to 45-watt power use, Tom.
I mean, I'm sure someone will,
Oh,
and
sure. There will be someone that does.
Maybe they won't. They sometimes lock down these chips a ton.
But yeah, I think an approach of, well, like you said, ARM is appreciably more efficient at 10 watts. Okay, maybe the strategy going forward is sub 10 watt CPUs. We have our own ARM architecture on it. That makes perfect sense to me. And those are just 2 separate ecosystems.
Yeah. And again, so I know there's a lot of gamers going, who cares about ARM? And I don't blame you, but I thought this was an interesting leak even for gamers, again, because of the repercussions. Let's be clear what this seems to suggest. This seems to suggest that AMD is going to make Infinity Cache standard on APUs late this year or early next year moving forward. That's giant. We all thought they probably would with Strix Point, but they didn't. this is long overdue. And also that this uses RDNA 3.5 plus seemingly. Again, that tells me, I know there's a lot of conjecture online that Medusa will use RDNA 3.5. I find it hard to believe it wouldn't be like 3.75, 3.5 plus, whatever you want to call it. Like that this wouldn't have some enhancement in it that is more than just 3.5 again. And hearing machine learning, it sounds like they might get FP8
Mhm.
and so therefore be able to run modern FSR. And moving forward, well, RDNA 3 will be used for a long time. It'll be used for a long time, but with a better version.
Yeah.
This piece of content is brought to you by the OBSBot Meet 2. The Meet 2 is the smallest 4K webcam on the market with the ultimate streaming experience. It is very small, it's right here. And it actually even has a little magnetic base that it can attach to go on top of your monitor or laptop if you want to use it for that on the go as well. And actually, the quality is pretty incredible. It has a 1/2-inch CMOS sensor with a f divided by 1.8 aperture that allows for use in low light conditions with HDR support. And of course, it has AI imaging features like auto framing. Like if it sees me here, it can like center the frame on you. You've seen me, move my camera around all the time. It has close-up mode, gesture controls. You can enable it so you can actually tell it to go do things with your hands. And it actually comes in a bunch of fun colors as well, as you can see on here. And, the final thing I would also say, the ease of use, the ability to move the camera around, look at things in my office, follow me, get different shots. The quality's pretty dang close to a camera that costs like 5 times as much. And so I genuinely recommend it. You're seeing me use this camera right now. And so if you want to check them out for yourself and support the channel, follow the links in the directions below. There's a link to the Amazon page where you can buy it there, and also a link to their official store. So please support Moore's Law is Dead by supporting OBSBot by checking out their Meet 2 camera today. Carbon Cry writes in, is RDNA 3.5 plus as many pluses can fit the new Vega 3, the super area efficient GPU used for APUs for years? Yeah, I think it is.
Sure.
Like, they used Vega in Renoir and Cezanne, and I
They used it in a
guess,
few, right?
and the 12 nanometer chips before them. Granted, the Vega in Renoir and Cezanne was kind of RDNA 0.5, but still,
Sure.
like, yes, this like late stage Vega that was used for a long time, that is what RDNA 3.5, I believe, is.
Yeah. I mean, it's going into a lot of products, or what they're calling our RDNA 3.5, I guess.
The one thing I wonder too is like, would it make sense to make a budget RDNA 3.5 GPU? Like, you have RDNA 4 taking up quite a lot of die space for just 64 compute units, conceivably, therefore. Actually, not conceivably, supposedly, based on what I've heard, this should be the case that, wait, what would that be then? Like a 180 millimeter square die or something then for Navi 44. Like, could we then think of RDNA 3.5 or 3.5 plus whatever as like RDNA 4 dense? And like, could this be turned into a 100 millimeter squared, like 32 compute unit, 24 compute unit card that you could actually sell at $200? I don't know. It's something to think about.
I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
I guess I just don't know if the economics of the time really allow for a $200 card to exist anymore,
In general.
though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of doubt they would do that though, because and again, I have other stuff to get to leaking over the next couple of weeks. It's very exciting. But one snippet I decided to let out in this video was that it seems like Zen 6 desktop may come with 8 RDNA 4 compute units. When I see that, I go, I don't know if they're making low end GPUs again, because that would be the equivalent of like maybe a Hawk Point or better in gaming performance. And if you're putting the equivalent of like a 1650 or better in every GPU and every CPU, to me that sounds like we are totally done making low end GPU. We're going to carpet bomb the market with integrated graphics that are decent in every product.
I mean, at a certain point, yeah, like going up to 40 or 48 CUs in an APU. I mean, that's getting to, if their APUs ever actually get to the point where they're releasing them at like close to the same time, or they're the same generation. So like if you get an RDNA 5 APU and an RDNA 5 GPU released at the same time. I mean, 40 CUs, that's just a mid-range card at that point.
All right. Better writes, and it says, maybe I haven't been paying much attention, but has there been any killer app for an MPU yet? At least with AMD, as their GPU architecture adds more AI performance, I wonder if it would make more sense to put that die spades towards more compute units using RDNA 4 or newer architectures. Not really, honestly.
You haven't used AI emoji, Tom?
Which I don't. Do we really even need the NPU to make an emoji? That's a really low res thing.
I don't know. I'm being snarky. I don't think there's a killer AI app unless you're an AI researcher.
No, and I'm a little surprised there isn't at least one useful thing that we use more often already. Wouldn't you agree? Like something like that we finally use. It doesn't, like, again, I have this Copilot Plus Strix Point PC here I've been messing around with. It has a Copilot button. I can look at Windows Task Manager and see the NPU. It's not being used when I use Copilot at all. And that's kind of annoying me.
Cool. Yeah. Why is it there then?
Exactly. So the answer, short term, nope. All right. Let us now move on to story. Let me see here. Story number 4. Nvidia introduces RTX Pro 6000 GPU series. So quoting here from Hardware Lux, and then moving on to our own write-up. There will be 3 versions of the RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell Edition, an RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell Workstation Edition, an RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell Server Edition, and an RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell Max-Q Edition. That's right, Max-Q is alive again. There are differences in the design of the power limits between these because the Pro 6000 server and workstation come in 600 watts, while the Max-Q version is only 300 watts. So, Nvidia launched its Pro cards, and after nuking the separate Quadro brand and opening their studio drivers to everyone, they are now taking another step towards folding professional and gaming lineups together as the very gamer-named RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell. It almost sounds like a gaming card. Will, in its main SKU, use the 5090 cooler, which is probably forced because it has a 600 watt TDP and with the low volume of GB202, reusing the gaming cooler is probably the only cost-effective and possible way to cool the card. The Max-Q, on the other hand, with the same number of SMs but only 300 watts, will still use a blower design that is typical for professional GPUs, as will the cut-down GB203 cards. So the RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell is effectively a Blackwell Titan. I believe I saw Gamers Nexus make that argument as well. It has a gaming cooler. It has a gaming name, RTX, and it has Titan specs, like 10% more SMs, 8% higher boost clocks, and 20% more raw compute. As usual, this 20% does not fully translate to performance, with uncovered benchmarks from this channel showing only a 5% uplift. It's just one benchmark. I'm sure there's one game where it's 15%, but what matters more to intended users is the memory capacity. 96 gigabytes is an okay amount of space to fit an AI model into. I think I've seen rumors out there too that this thing's going to sell for $9,000 to $10,000 or something. So there you go. What do you think of that argument, Dan?
$20,000
potentially
in 3 months.
What do you think of that argument, though, that this kind of looks like Nvidia's pseudo making this look like a Titan?
Yeah. I mean, it's not typical of what they do with their professional designs, where they're usually a bit lower clocked and cost a lot more money, but they're, use less energy to be on 24/7. I guess that's what the Max-Q version is. But yeah, the Pro 6000, I don't know. They're branding it as a gaming card to some extent, even though I don't think any gamer is going to buy this unless they're Jensen Wang, who thinks desktops cost $10,000.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say about this thing, but I just think it's notable that they're bringing gaming. And again, Cartman Cry wrote up this one. It is worth noting all of the things together. Gaming card coming to professional drivers coming to gaming. It does seem like they're kind of starting to merge them, which, yes, eventually means they want these cards to all cost thousands of dollars. So go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, they don't really care about the gaming market at this point. So
their side hustle.
Yep. So I guess they're just trying to bring that branding along to their professional. It almost feels backwards, but I don't know.
Cypher Cookie writes in and says, "Hey Tom and Dan, just heard about Nvidia's new AI desktop mainboards with up to 384 gigabytes of unified memory. This sounds like the laptops you've mentioned before. Could it be that with everything we are seeing with the 5000 series, they aren't actually going for gaming at all, and it will be labeled as an AI laptop with a markup that is AI sized, obviously as well?" Um, yeah, I mean, look, they are. I think the focus is on AI, and I don't think you're going to see them push super hard for gamery laptops. They're going to be pushing for the professional, for creators with a paintbrush making the name and the advertising stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, to an extent, like, yeah, that's, I don't know. I guess that's where everyone thinks the money is now. So, well, I guess it's the highest profits.
Yeah.
So they are kind of right.
All right, let us now move on then to story number 5. RTX 5060 and 5060 Ti specs seemingly confirmed, according from video cards. Starting with the GB206-300 GPU and its 4608 CUDA cores, the specs revealed earlier have been from this channel R&D correct. These specs will be used by both variants of this model, and by variants, I mean the 16 gigabyte and the 8 gigabyte models, which are now also confirmed. Both models are 128-bit, so the bandwidth will not be probably that different between the cards. However, based on the specs we have, both models will ship with 28 gigabit per second memory, meaning the bandwidth should be 448 gigabytes per second, which is 55% higher than the last gen model. So AIBs, as they always do, leaked 5060 Ti and non-Ti specs. Coming from video cards, the GB206 cards will come with 8 gigabytes of memory, but at least there's, again, a 16 gigabyte variant of the Ti. Aside from the pitiful memory capacity, the 5060 Ti is positioned the same as the 4060 Ti relative to the 70 class cards, having a similar jump in SMs between them. However, the non-Ti is seemingly a much larger uplift in raw performance compared to the 4060, using the same die as the 5060 Ti this time around. So it's a shame that the 5060 only has 8 gigabyte variants. The 16 non-Ti could have been pretty cool if it was 350 as a 16 gigabyte low end graphics card. And by the way, I noticed this today while putting the notes together. There's another leak out of HP that literally shows 5060 Ti 8 gigabyte as a configuration option in their desktops. So yes, I think we can take these leaks to the bank. And I guess just to put a bow on one more thing here, and just want to look at the difference. So the 5060 has 3,840 CUDA cores, 4060 at 3,072. Yeah, so you're getting like 25% more CUDA cores or somewhere around there. And yeah, I mean, almost double the bandwidth. So yes, I think the 5060 will be like 30-40% faster than the 4060. It's just,
The
are
problem
you
is,
ready to crush 1080p hard again? I mean,
yeah, the problem with the 5070 is, like, with no 16 gigabyte model, I think it's going to really, really look bad in ray tracing benchmarks. Like, that's going to be a massive issue. So raster really might be all that matters. And I don't know, as you go down the product stack for Blackwell, I guess there were some issues with performance at the top end. So maybe down here it will perform relatively well with the relative SM counts. But I don't know. I think the 5060 is really shot in the foot at only having 8 gigabytes. And the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte could be good, but we'll see. If it all depends on volume too.
volume and price.
Yeah.
Right? Because if again, like what would you, so, okay, let me pull up these specs actually again here. Because if we actually estimate it, we can see the 5060 Ti has barely more CUDA cores than the 4060 Ti, but a ton more bandwidth. So look, I think it'll be 20-30% faster, which, yes, would put it probably above the 7700 XT, not quite at 7800 XT. And so I guess if it was with 16 gigabytes for 450, it's kind of okay-ish, but I kind of think it needs to be 400 because it's like a little stronger than what I expect the 9060 XT to be. And
Hmm.
I think that'll probably be $399. So yeah, look, if it's $500, this is a really stupid product. Although it might be the only one you can buy. Who knows? I guess that would make it a great product. But
Do you think they would put it that close to the MSRP of the 5070 though? I guess I don't remember.
they did before, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be closer than before, which is why I think they might go with 450. because it was 500 before, and then they did a secret price drop to 450 pretty quickly because no one wanted a 60 at $500. But yeah, so I guess I expect kind of 450 for this thing. The 8 GB
Sure.
model, I don't know what to say. 299 at most. I still don't think you should buy 8 GB cards. If they make it 349, it can F right off.
You mean for the 5060?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what is there to say about 8 GB cards anymore?
Like you jokingly said, it crushed 1080p gaming. It's like, yeah, that we've been able to do that for a while now, and I don't think this is going to be bringing new frontiers to $400 or $350 ray tracing because it only has 8 GB. If it had 12, maybe it would be okay, but with only 8 GB, it's just right out.
Yeah, it's right out.
Right out.
So pretty much confirmed entirely here, though, guys. So I think we can just move on then to story number 6. Nvidia announces Blackwell Ultra for 2025, Rubin for 26, and Rubin Ultra for 2027. Quoting from Tom's Hardware before the editorialization, the Nvidia GTC 2025 event was jam-packed with news from CEO Jensen Huang, touching on everything from autonomous car development and a roadmap for AI data centers to robotic AI, and of course, Nvidia computers for business. We even got a look at Blackwell Ultra AI chips for next-level computational AI, the new Nvidia Groot N1 AI model for robotics, and a fun little robot on stage called Blue. How fun. Powered by Newton in collaboration with Google DeepMind and Disney. For the whole family.
Blue's going to take your job.
Far from such insignificant concerns as supply or upcoming 60 class launches, Nvidia basked in the AI boom's glow at this GTC, their annual conference centered around data center and AI. Well, this channel leaked ambitious plans for Nvidia to launch Rubin by mid-2025. These plans seem to have been unrealized, as Nvidia will now launch Blackwell Ultra this year instead. It is the same Blackwell, just with more memory capacity and bandwidth courtesy of HBM3E. Rubin is thus pushed to 26. We learned it is also composed of 2 massive dies, just like Blackwell. But what's more, in 2027, Nvidia plans to launch Rubin Ultra, which will combine 2 of these sets together. That's right. In total, 4 reticle-sized dies combined into 1 monolithic chip. But AI companies looking for ways to spend venture capital funding will have to look to 2028 to get the next architectural generation. It's a funny note from Carbon Cry there. Feynman, this year, Jensen seems to have been more defensive of NVIDIA's AI supremacy. AMD's MI300X and 325X present a challenge, as does Broadcom's push for customized AI accelerators. So competition is heating up. And even if NVIDIA is still by far the best, challenges to their dominance are mounting because AMD is basically planning to launch a generation every year or so as well. So I think the biggest takeaways for me are, yes, all AI, wow, is gaming an afterthought to NVIDIA. But I think that's a story we've told a million times by now. Really, what's interesting is Feynman. They confirmed their next generation architecture is called that. Will that also be for gaming? I asked someone at NVIDIA recently. That person said it's actually still in flux exactly what they will do for the next gen.
There will be like 2 separate architectures like they've had in the past.
Like Lovelace and Hopper, or Ampere and Lovelace and Hopper. Yeah, that's the one.
Right?
Yeah, because Hopper came out first on 4 nanometer. But I think at a minimum, I would say this. If we're getting Blackwell Ultra in 2025, I mean, and then Vera Rubin in 2026, that means I've seen some people like, is Blackwell's successor going to launch late this year or early next year? No, I think the earliest we're seeing Blackwell is end of next year, which means that, again.
You mean Rubin?
What did you say? What?
You said Blackwell?
No, I think in gaming we will be using Blackwell until late next year if Vera Rubin is launching then. And because of that, I've seen people go, oh, well, Medusa Halo, if it's only got double the bandwidth and 20% more compute units and RDNA 3.5 plus, you know, when I see that, it seems to me like Medusa Halo and Point might launch first late this year, early next year, with Medusa Desktop Olympic Ridge coming with RDNA 4, a newer generation of graphics in it, half a year after that. And this is all important because that means, look, if AMD only increases performance of Medusa Halo 30 to 40% over Strix Halo, like I think that's enough for them to go from competing with the 5070 to the 5080 or something in laptop. And that's
Oh
a
yeah.
big deal. Like, that's a big deal. So AMD may actually get to where we were hoping they would be in competition with APUs with Strix Halo that was delayed with Medusa Halo, if it comes out when we think it will.
Yeah, I mean, if Medusa Halo, like that's their seems to be the problems with these APUs is they keep coming out later than we think. Like if Medusa Halo comes out on time, they almost don't need to challenge discrete desktops and laptops anymore. Like they could still put out a 90 or yeah, I guess they it would be a 90 now. They could, but that's most of the market anyways, up to 48 compute units.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think all AMD would have to bother doing, there's no need for low end GPUs. You've got it covered. Like, the one thing you would just do maybe is launch a 970M that you just launch with like 16
Sure.
or 24 gigabyte. Well, I guess it'd be 16 because it's GDDR6. You just launch that as a 5080M competitor or something, and you're
Hmm.
done. And everything else can just be APUs. And if there is some ultimate version of Navi 48 coming, maybe you could launch some higher capacity version of that next year as a, like, I don't know what they call it, 990M. Would they go to 1090? I don't know. Um, and yeah, so I think AMD Nvidia is moving quick, but it just seems like brute force. They're not like, they're sticking with Blackwell another year.
Hmm.
Rubin is going to be used for multiple years with them just gluing more of them together. Like, I like Nvidia's staying ahead, but it's through spending. It's not because they're making 2 new architectures a year or anything.
So you think die that's 4 reticle limit?
Yes, I think that's
you
brute
think
force.
you think that's expensive?
I think it might be. I think it might be. Techno writes in, at this point, I know it's 3 to 6 years away, but are we even convinced the RTX 7070 will beat the RTX 4090 if we get 2 more lots of 15% increases with a price freeze? The 7070 will barely match the 4080. At least maybe you'll have 18 gigabytes by then, though. So the real competition should be 7070 versus 9070 XT. Yeah, I think they will. I think they're going to have a big 3 or 2 nanometer generation in 2 years. I don't know what it will be. I don't know how they'll do it. Will they just die, shrink Blackwell, call it a new architecture next year, and pump up the specs? Maybe. But I think in 2 gens, yes, they will beat the 4090 with the 7070.
Yeah, I would say most likely.
It's just a
But
gut check. This isn't even me doing math.
if they really are falling apart when it comes to gaming, and we get 2 more Blackwells or 2 more similar Blackwell-esque generations, no, they wouldn't be beating a 4090. I don't
And
think.
that would be quite pathetic, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Quick Jumper writes in, hey, Tom and Dan, longtime listener here. Thank you for your support. When I look at NVIDIA's transformation into an AI company, which is to say 88% of their $130.5 billion revenue now is from data center versus 9% from gaming, I wonder about the human side of this shift. There have been reports of NVIDIA employees working extremely long hours to keep up with design and support tasks while the company juggles limited TSMC COWOSL capacity and ships low-yielding Blackwell silicon just to meet urgent AI demand. It seems like the pressure isn't just on their supply chain, but on their people too. With such overwhelming AI demand, they'd be crazy to prioritize gaming. But at what cost to the company culture and teams who built NVIDIA's gaming legacy? How sustainable is their current pace as they try to be the backbone of global AI while still keeping the lights on for gamers? Here's an example report, and he links to a Yahoo report about NVIDIA employees saying they often work 7 days a week. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm in contact with NVIDIA employees, and they expect you to work very, very hard. But I will say, and this is changing, AMD's culture is getting better about burning people out. But at least as of a couple of years ago, they seemed a little happier than a lot of the AMD employees, because even though they're expected to work weekends sometimes, if they wanted a week off, they would get it.
Mhm.
They would have to ask for it, and it better not be on crunch season, but they could ask for weeks off. And AMD would used to, again, I hear not anymore as of a year ago, but like a couple of years ago, there was a little bit of burnout there. So now the culture for gaming, yeah, I mean, a lot of people join NVIDIA to work on gaming, and some of my NVIDIA contacts talk about gaming projects a lot less often to me now because they're not on them.
Yeah, I mean, if I could see there being a lack of enthusiasm or a loss of enthusiasm for some people, although I don't know when you like look at the market cap of Nvidia and the number of employees you have, and it's like, well, all these people are worth a lot of money at this point. I could see that being invigorating to an extent. But yeah, also working 7 days a week is not sustainable long term. So if they're having constant crunch issues in certain departments, yeah, that's not sustainable. Then they need to either expand the company or figure a healthier work environment.
Mm-hmm. And they're willing to do that because they get paid stock options as salaried employees at Nvidia, and the stock has gone through the moon. And so it's like, let's make sure Vera Rubin launches when we need it to launch.
Mm-hmm.
When it got delayed. And again, this came directly from Nvidia employees. People that told me Rubin was going to try to launch this year. And who knows, maybe they delayed that after seeing all the Blackwell delays. They're like, maybe we're burning people out. We need to slow down a little bit here and how much we progress. But
Yeah.
like they'll go, I don't know. I mean, I got paid stock options that were like $150 and now they're worth hundreds of dollars. I mean, I'm almost a millionaire in my retirement account. I think they're willing to do the work most of the time. The Nvidia employees I talk to don't sound mad.
Huh, okay.
That's the way I would put it.
I think
Now, if their stock goes way down and there's an AI bust, I bet that's where they go, okay, taking a sabbatical, taking a month off.
Well, and that is the thing that worries me with NVIDIA's current model is if they're really putting all of their eggs in one basket and that basket has a trap door in it.
We said the same thing about mining, though, and they found a basket for that basket to fall into. And so I guess we'll just have to see if the Jensen sleight of hand can happen again into something else.
Well, we'll see if he keeps
maybe
getting more
self-driving.
spatulas.
Probably not. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Let us now move on to story number 7. TSMC pitched Intel Foundry JV to Nvidia, AMD, and Broadcom. Quoting from 2 Reuters articles, the first one's from March 12th. TSMC has pitched U.S. chip designers Nvidia, Advanced Micro Devices, and Broadcom about taking stakes in a joint venture that would operate Intel's factories, according to 4 sources of Reuters familiar with the matter. Under the proposal, the Taiwanese chip-making giant would run the operation of Intel's Foundry division, which makes chips adopted for the needs of customers, but it would not own more than 50%, the sources said. Qualcomm is also pitched by TSMC, according to one of the sources in a separate source as well. Now, quoting from Reuters on the 19th. During a press conference at NVIDIA's annual developer conference in San Jose, California, Huang was asked whether NVIDIA was part of a consortium to buy Intel. Nobody's invited us to a consortium, Huang said. Nobody invited me. Maybe other people are involved, but I don't know. There might be a party, but I wasn't invited to it. So this is interesting. This is multiple sources. If Reuters says that, they have a track record here of being very accurate. So as Intel keeps bleeding, though, sharks keep circling, plans are forming and dissolving. This time, TSMC is entering the fray, threatened by possible chip tariffs on Taiwan. The only thing everyone, outside of Intel, can seemingly agree on is that something needs to be done. The situation just starting to feel murky as ever when it comes to such massive deals. And any deal involving Intel would be a massive "this is normal," as is Jensen Huang seemingly disproving Reuters reports a week later. No one is going to come out and confirm this if it was true, by the way, not until a deal was done. So yeah, and this was written by Carbon Cry. He seems to suspect he would have said this no matter what until the deal was done.
Oh, sure.
But I think I believe Reuters when they say this. It just means they're not sure it's going to happen. So he's not confirming anything. And he can't confirm anything. It would be stupid too.
Oh, yeah. That would, I don't know, mess with a lot of stocks if he just confirmed that really quickly. So, yeah, obviously don't play things close to your chest until this deal is through, or falls apart, because that could also happen. But yeah, like you said, I don't think Reuters makes things up usually.
No,
I think they have a track record of one of the more reliable news sources on the planet.
Mm-hmm. All right, now let us move on to the final story. Lots of little stories today. Let me see. All right. Jessie is excited that it's finally spring. She's excited to run around and jump in the yard. And you know what? I think this sponsor here will also make you jump for joy, and that is CDKeyOffer.com. CDKeyOffer.com is a long-term sponsor of Moore's Law Z that provides something I think the PC gaming community just needs, and that's reasonable pricing on Microsoft software. But they have other things too. They have games and other products that you can check out. And the reason we've worked with them so long is they are good to us, and they've been good to the community for pretty much the entire life of Moore's Law is Dead. And so I recommend you support someone that supports this channel. And you know what? If you want to, make sure you use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software, and Die Shrink to save 3% on everything else on the website. Again, using those offer codes helps the channel, and it also helps you save money on something that is already much more fairly priced than you can get elsewhere. Again, support Moore's Law is Dead at cdkeyoffer.com today. Story number 8, Lip-Bu Tan named CEO of Intel. Quoting first from Intel's press release, Tan is a longtime technology investor and widely respected executive with more than 20 years of semiconductor and software experience, as well as deep relationships across Intel's ecosystem. He served as CEO of Cadence Design Systems from 2009 to 2021. They're very highly regarded, where he led a reinvention of the company and drove a cultural transformation centered on customer-centric innovation. During his time as CEO, Cadence more than doubled its revenue, expanded operating margins, and delivered a stock price appreciation of more than 3,200%. Now, quoting from Lip-Bu Tan's opening CEO letter, he says, "I subscribe to a simple philosophy. Stay humble, work hard, delight our customers. More importantly, we need to work as one team. And as your CEO, I will empower leaders to take ownership and actions to move our business forward. Together, we will work hard to restore Intel's position as a world-class products company, establish ourselves as a world-class foundry, and delight our customers." I love that, delight our customers like never before. Now, this is interesting here because now I'm going to quote from Daniel Nenny, friend of the show, from Broken Silicon 287 from December 2024. If you don't get along with the board, you generally resign, right? And so one of the board members resigned. His name was Lip-Bu Tan. I know Lip-Bu Tan. Here's why he left. He came aboard, and the first thing he said was, "We need to cut expenses." And he did this at Cadence as well. And I mean, sometimes you just have to cut expenses, but Pat did the opposite. He hired 15,000 people in the first year right out of the gate. He spent so much money. You have to be a little more cautious with your capital. That's what I was recently told. The real reason why Lip-Bu resigned was because of cost issues. Lip-Bu didn't resign because he wanted the manufacturing to split. That was another rumor. He didn't have an argument with Pat. He just told the board, "Listen, I don't think this is the right way to go. This really isn't good for me." Lip has never been been on a big board like Intel, and he's on 100 small company boards. He's an investor. So that's why he left. And maybe that's because he's not used to having to mince words. And that's really the heart
No,
of the
sure.
problem. Intel just spent too much money. So that's funny because Daniel Nenny predicted this. He said this would be the guy. Anyways, this could be one of the guys. Intel has a new leader now. Lip-Bu Tan returns to the embattled company after his brief tenure as board member, which according to industry expert Daniel Nenny was due to Tan's insistence Intel needed cuts. From that, it sounds like Lip-Bu Tan understands Intel's problems a heck of a lot more than Pat Gelsinger did. At the same time, Lip-Bu seems like he might want to keep the company together, foundry and product. His initial email to employees certainly implies so. Is this the right choice, though? Lip-Bu Tan has the credentials. He is an engineer, a nuclear one, but he has more experience in managing companies and investing in them. So he has the right tool set, as Intel's problems are with the management and their perception to investors, and being an outsider to Intel will help too. Tan won't be hesitant to make the cuts he feels are needed, and being hired as CEO by the same board he voluntarily left implies the board is ready to step back and let Lip-Bu Tan do what needs to be done. All right, Dan, what'd you think of this?
I don't want to be overly presumptuous because I recall being optimistic about Pat Gelsinger when he was hired as CEO, but I mean, just reading between the lines, that seems like a complete rejection of what Pat Gelsinger's vision of the company is, having the guy on the board that left come back. All I really hope is that he's not too much of a hatchet job CEO, because those can also be very deleterious to a company, even if some amount of shrinkage needs to be done at Intel.
Yeah. I'm hearing all the things that I think need to happen and what I would want to hear from a new CEO. I don't know what, here's the two examples of things I would not want to hear from a new CEO at Intel. I wouldn't want them to go in either of these two directions. One is, so blatantly being a hatchet job that they maybe don't even have a solution. Like if they just came in and they're like, we fucked up, we're firing everyone, and the easy times are over. It's like you can't just come in and like remove hope. But at the same time, I wouldn't want someone to come in and be like, the reason Intel did badly is we bet on the wrong things. We bet on GPU when we should have bet on AI. Maybe that's true. But, we bet on this, we bet on that, and I'm going to now make the right bets. It's like, it just seems like you fucked everything up that you launched. So clearly it's like a structural problem. And this guy seems to get that.
Yeah, maybe if they went really hard in on AI instead of GPU, they would have released some shitty NPU,
Right,
or something.
They did. Maybe they would have just released a ton of bad. Like I think Falcon Shores and Rialto Bridge was one that was canceled. I know. Like maybe if that would have come out and then they wouldn't have launched Arc, but maybe Rialto Bridge would have just been terrible still. Like it's very clear
Yeah.
the company was too big, doing too many things, and leadership needed to change. And it doesn't matter what thing you screw up. It just seems like everything was getting screwed up. And so yeah, I am delighted by the things that he says.
Yeah, and the stock price clearly reflected that because I think it jumped up a ton when when it was announced. Which I don't know. That just could be anything changing at Intel is optimistic.
Yeah. Well, and it's down so much that it was probably waiting to jump up at least a little bit. I guess, yeah, the final thing I would just say is I think this is now the start of a new era of Intel. And we've been in this era since the channel started, really, of watching Intel wither away, death by 1,000 incompetent cuts for like 6 years. And I think we should maybe treat this as a reset and try to have at the same time, like, to be honest, I think this is going to be 5 years of them firing tons of people, cutting programs, and starting over. So there won't always be as exciting as we want. But I think I at least now feel liberated to move forward of like, all right, fresh thoughts.
Things might start changing.
Clear the let's move past the fact that we had Ryan Shrout tweeting at me lies and getting mad at me and Roger. Like, we're in a new era. Let's put past grievances aside and let's hope Intel really succeeds now, because and I think there's a misconception too from people of like when me and you talk about not being excited about Intel, it's not because we want them to fail. It's because everything we're seeing tells me it's going to go badly.
Yeah.
Now it's not. Let's actually root that they do things well here, because before it just to me felt like we were rooting for a company to keep stabbing itself in the chest, like when an ARC product launched. And now maybe we can root for something optimistically. Root Knight writes in, I believe Intel needs to win something, whatever big or small endeavor it is, to boost morale and rekindle trust in their shareholder and customers. What do you believe is the easiest win Intel can achieve in their current state? I guess I have an idea. What do you think, Dan?
I mean, all I really had like short term that I can think of is some big contract win with IFS.
Yeah.
But like I think that could signal a reversal at the company.
Yeah, Nvidia announces that Blackwell 2.0 is being manufactured.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that and Nova Lake's good. I don't know about Panther Lake, and here's why. Panther Lake uses a lot of the same crap that Meteor Lake and Lunar Lake and Arrow Lake did that all fell short, because Lunar Lake's the only one that didn't, but for some reason they're continuing with the tiles that Meteor Lake used, at least in how it's organized for the most part. So I would say if Panther Lake turned out to like match Zen 6, big deal. I don't really expect that though. So I would say Nova Lake, right? Nova Lake needs to win.
I always forget, is Panther Lake, is it supposed to be desktop also, or just
honestly,
laptop?
man, I haven't asked. I don't know. Like, I've been so bored of Intel lately. I will probably ask again soon, because I know people who would know. But I will say the last time I talked to these people was probably late last year, and it sounded like a lot was in flux. Like, are they going to re-enable Arrow Lake 2.0? Is Panther Lake Desktop going to happen? I mean, I've seen rumors come out over the past month. It's just back and forth on everything, and that's why I haven't been covering them. So, yeah, this seems to happen right in the middle of every year. We realize, oh, we should probably do another Intel leak, right, to update everything, and I think that's what I'll do. But anyways, anything having to do with Arrow Lake and Panther Lake, my point is I'm not going to hold it against Intel too hard as long as they aren't more steps backwards. It's Nova
Mhm.
Lake where I'm like, that needs to match Zen 6 or Zen 7, really, or beat it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we need a win out of Intel in CPU. I don't care about their GPUs that no one buys. By the way, I heard today, I won't say the number to protect a source. I heard today in distribution that the amount of Battle Mage chips shipped was comparable to the 5080's launch total.
Cool.
So again, like, that's why it's hard to even care about something like Arc, because they don't make them. Like, they
Well,
don't
what if
make
I
them.
told you Celestial, Tom, beats
A little
a
bird told me
5090?
that Alchemist Plus is still coming out. Quick Jumper writes in, "Hi Tom, I need to address Pat Gelsinger's comments. He recently stated the CPU was the king of the hill and applauded Jensen for his tenacity and just saying, 'No, I'm not trying to build one of those. I'm trying to deliver against the workload starting in graphics.' And then he got lucky, right, with AI. Let's recap quickly. In 2006, NVIDIA developed CUDA. In 2008, NVIDIA started working with scientists on using GPUs for more tasks than gaming. In 2012, NVIDIA started optimizing architectures for AI after Alex Next. In 2017, they developed Volta with Tensor cores. And from 2018 through 2020, both Turing and Ampere architectures were starting to lean heavily into AI. So in my opinion, Pat doesn't get it. He doesn't understand the software ecosystem, not the hardware innovations that were needed for AI. What's your assessment of Gelsinger's perspective on NVIDIA's success and his understanding of business and innovation? That he doesn't. And I don't understand what's going on with these articles. Like, you'll see it on Tom's Hardware and like a lot of more mainstream websites, actually. That I just like, Pat Gels, former Intel CEO, says, like, who cares? Why are we quoting the guy that ran Intel into the ground? I mean, I think this reader mail is very well put together in outlining, look, I don't think Jensen planned in 2005 they would conquer AI, but it's clear it wasn't a fluke. They were well positioned.
Yeah, I don't know. This just read as oddly condescending to the person that's sitting on a pile of money now. Like, I don't really know what else to say. Like, yeah, he made all the right bets. That sly kid. Well, I ran a company into the ground. Like, I don't know what else the takeaway is other than that. It's, I don't know, weird. Like, maybe take a step back and think of missteps you made, Pat.
Go to confession again, Pat, and stop tweeting. All right. Let us now move on to the wrap up. This is, of course, the stories that we thought needed mention, but would not probably warrant a full 10-minute conversation. A huge wrap up this week. The first one is the 9070, not 9070 XT, the 9070 two-fan reference cooler has emerged. Like,
Hmm.
on chip hell, someone just has it. Again, telling you, AMD just made these reference coolers. My suspicion, again, is they would have used these if this launched last year. But by the time RDNA 4 was actually launching, AIBs were fully ready to go with their designs.
Sure.
And there was just no point. But it is interesting to see it. I kind of like the two-fan version of it, actually.
I mean, it doesn't. It looks fine. It's not like a
Nah.
massive
It's not as
departure from the previous
impressive
designs.
as the founders from Nvidia, but
Yeah.
and again, I guess I could have made this a story, but I think we already talked about it, so I made it a wrap up. More evidence the 9060 XT will come in 8 and 16 gigabyte variants. I mean, I don't see a point in an 8 gigabyte card, but at least this is the equivalent of if Nvidia had 16 gigabyte variants, not of the TI, but of the 60, I think.
Yeah. For me, it's, I kind of just switched top to bottom. AMD this generation was 16 gigabyte, but I don't know. If then I would be okay if like just the 9060 were 16 gigabyte. I mean 8/16 gigabyte. I feel like this XT should just have this single SKU or just 16 gigabytes. I don't know. Like, it to an extent makes sense to keep releasing 8 gig cards for 1080p, but why go all the way this far up?
Yeah, I agree. And I was recently talking to a contact at AMD over the past week where I was like, what is the price of RAM? I've seen some crazy things quoted. And the person told me, I don't have it up next to me, so I might be a little off, but it was something like $3 to $5 for GDDR6 per gigabyte. And then
Okay.
which is kind of near record lows, especially given inflation and everything else. And then GDDR7 is probably like $7 to $8 per gigabyte. So where GDDR6 used to be, and with that in mind, I'm like, what is the point of 8 gigabytes then? Like, what are you gonna, unless you're selling that for $200? But they're not going to. Everybody, they won't. But let's say
Yeah, I
that.
mean, it might only be like $50 cheaper. Like,
But let's say they are going to sell it for $200 somehow. Like, yeah, like you said. So like 8 times like 24 bucks. So like, why would I make even a 299 or even 249 9060 XT 8 gigabyte if I could make a 280 or 330 16 gigabyte one? Like, even the cut down model should come with 16 gigabytes. This doesn't make any sense to me. And it's going to be comical if this thing is actually 7700 XT performance.
yeah.
Only 8 gigabytes. 77, that's 6800 performance, RX 6800 performance, and you're giving it 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's not enough, man.
Yeah, it's stupid.
So I don't know what AMD is thinking. Again, it's like, and I'll say what I think the cards really cost. I'm not going to pussyfoot around this. $750 for the 9070 XT. I'm not saying I want it to be. Let's be honest, that's where the price is
Yeah.
headed. $650 for the 9070. $400, hopefully. We'll see if it goes above that for the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte. Then just $330 for the 9060 16 gigabyte and keep selling the 7600 XT 16 gigabyte for $300 or $250. I just don't. I just don't get this.
Yeah, I don't see where it
You
fits.
can sell it to China. You can make 8 gigabyte mobile cards, I guess, because people put up with that. But the one thing I will say too is talking to Kerry Nosugata, contributor to Moore's Law is Dead, behind the scenes today about this. It's like, maybe it doesn't matter. Like, maybe an 8 gigabyte model is to give them options if RAM prices spike or to sell in China. Because
I guess
I'm told basically 10 to 20% of the volume is the 9070 non XT. This is going to be half the die size. Maybe like 5% of the volume needs to be cut down. It might not matter. They might just not make the 8 gigabyte model in any real volume and then just reserve it for if prices spike.
Yeah, or like 5% of the volume is that or something crazy.
Yeah. All right. Also, I think we already mentioned this, but it's in the wrap up. 24 gigabyte 5080 confirmed by MSI. Also, we didn't make this a major story, or did we? Like, I know we talked about it somewhere. MSI isn't going to make 9000 series graphics cards, and they're the first to announce 24 gigabyte 5080. Feels like this is, again, when we talked about this is the trade-off. Right? This is the deal they made.
Yeah, they're aligning themselves more with Nvidia, maybe becoming their new
GIMP.
EVGA or something.
Yeah. All right. I just thought I'd throw this in here. GM is going to use NVIDIA's AI chips and software to automate vehicles and factories. So all those AI videos you saw of virtual factories being run by robots, I guess GM is doing it. I'd be curious to see how well those work.
Well, we'll know soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I titled this User Benchmark Peaks Again. I mean, what is there to say? Who hurt you, User Bench?
Lisa Sue.
Like, this was, we shouldn't give them airtime, but it is hilarious. And honestly, in this this Tom's Hardware article is very well written. It is hilarious how they're talking about the 9070 XT.
Yeah, like basically not talking about it and then just using this as a soapbox to bitch about AMD. Like that's what their review of the 9070 XT is, bitching about AMD.
Yeah, it's just weird. And I don't remember who said this, if it was like someone mentioned it in the Moore's Law at Discord, or if this was something I heard from someone behind the scenes in passing this week. But just in case people are wondering, no, Intel is not paying User Benchmark. And they actually hate User Benchmark because they think it makes Intel look stupid. Like, this degree of fanboyism is never funded by a company like this. This is absolutely comical. So which begs the question, who touched you? Why do they hate AMD so much? It's crazy. It's beyond fanboy. They have like a mission and makes them look stupid. It's so silly.
Yeah, I know. Goofy.
Couple Switch links here. Number one, supposedly 400,000 Switch 2s were shipped in January or Q1, I believe, or something, ahead of tariffs, which again is funny. Again, Nintendo's mad. We've been leaking Nintendo stuff. Guys, you like have it sitting in warehouses with hundreds of thousands of them. Yes, it's going to leak. Like,
Well, they teased an event, Tom, or they teased an event. Like, so something is supposedly going to happen. I think on April 2nd. So, crossing my fingers that we actually get a launch date for this thing.
Yeah. And then also there's a rumor that it uses a 120 hertz display. Did you look at this at all? I haven't followed up on if this is likely to be
I
accurate
don't know.
or not.
I don't know how credible it is. I've never been to the subreddit that gaming leaks and rumors. Uh, it just seems like there is discussion online that it might use a 120 hertz display, which, okay, I mean, I don't know if it's necessary for the Switch 2's power, and it could end up being a waste of energy, but if it's not, okay, cool.
Yeah, I saw some people suggesting maybe there's a lost in translation here, and it just can support 120 hertz for the games that want to be able to do that, like any modern device. Who knows? And
Yeah,
therefore,
because
maybe that would. I mean, I guess I would.
well, because I could see like well docked, you would want it to be able to do one. It would perform 120 hertz, but not docked, I don't think many games would run at that high of a frame rate on the Switch too.
Yeah, I gotta say too. My one contrarian argument for why it might make sense is maybe it will be able to output it docked, and maybe all screens of this size are 120 hertz now, and so it might as well have the capability, even though
Sure,
90% of games will be 30 hertz. Actually, I like that argument because if you notice, like
sure.
my phone has a 120 hertz display, the iPhone does, I believe, like everything seems to.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like at a certain point, it's not really economically detrimental to like or cost prohibitive to really do a 120
Like
hertz display.
everything's 120 hertz now. Like, so
Yeah.
maybe that's so actually from that perspective, I actually wouldn't be surprised if it did. SoftBank continues plans for ARM domination. I think this one may have been added by Carbon Cry here. Let me see. Just now say it'll be acquiring Ampere Computing. Yeah, I don't have much to say. SoftBank's one of those mega corporations that made a few good bets and a few really bad ones. And I guess now they're buying Ampere, which is pretty well regarded for their server chips.
I don't know much about them beyond them randomly showing up on benchmarks, and they generally perform pretty well.
Microsoft admits Qualcomm has high returns and Qualcomm disputes it. This is funny because this keeps happening where I don't remember if it's like Intel or usually AMD just takes a jab at Qualcomm, like, hey, at least they use our chips and don't return them the next day. Like, and then Qualcomm's like, that's not true. No one said that. No one returns chips. Everyone loves our Qualcomm laptops. And now Microsoft is like, nope, they hate them.
Yep.
And this is just funny, guys. I talk to retailers. They definitely are returned more often. Like 50% return rates. I heard at some like micro centers. Like, no, people freaking hate these things. So this is definitely true, at least anecdotally, from what I can see. And finally, Microsoft is shutting down Skype. Another awesome acquisition by Microsoft. They always run every company great that they acquire.
Well, hey, it only took them how long? Like 15. It took them 15 years to run this one into the ground, Tom. So
You know, the funny thing is I actually think it worked pretty well over the past 5 years.
I
It
really,
was terrible 10 years ago.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, Zoom just took over for teleconferencing over the
Think of how
pandemic.
dumb
So
that is. They were so well positioned for the pandemic with Skype, and they let Zoom crush them because they can't do anything competently.
yep.
It's just a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Not that I
Zoom
really
just
care
had,
about Skype, but I remember before Microsoft acquired it, it worked really well for the time.
yeah, I guess Zoom was just an app that already had all of the things needed for your online like classrooms and stuff. So naturally, that one just took over, and Microsoft just let it happen, I guess.
Mhm. All right. Well, speaking of Microsoft's incompetence, JHH 50 series is available on eBay. Writes in and says, how much of the lack of graphical improvement from much faster hardware, consoles are a good example, have more to do with a return from 30 to 60 FPS, and now I would say to 120 or 144 FPS as a standard. As an example, the Xbox One X ran games typically at 30 frames per second, and the Series X is expected to run games at 60 frames per second. And if you do that, it has the same teraflops per frame. P.S. I know there's a lot more to performance than raw teraflops. No, it is an interesting point because we talk about, and I think a very fair one, why have graphics stagnated? And we can get into diminishing returns, which is definitely a real part of this. But well, PS4, Xbox One, the standard was still 30 frames per second. PS5, that just changed overnight. I mean, famously, Assassin's Creed Valhalla said they were going to launch at 4K 30, and there was such an uproar from fans, they added a 60 hertz mode before launch. And yeah, so that means you're going to get half the, I don't know if half the image quality, but you're going to waste more image quality or have lower image quality to get to a higher frame rate. And now we have PS5 Pro trying to run games at 120 frames per second. And a lot of gamers expect to game above 100 or 90 hertz at least on all of their even budget 1440p displays. I think there's an argument that doubling, then tripling, quadrupling, now octupling frame rates is the standard is maybe part of why graphics have diminishing returns.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're looking back 15 years ago, where I mean, I do think people to an extent exaggerate like the stagnation in image quality. Like a lot of those games, like it's not like it's unplayable image quality, but it is notably worse than it is now. It's also just way jankier frame rates, not even lower.
Right.
It's just way less stable frame rates.
I remember Far Cry 3.
Oh God,
the same frame rate in Far Cry 3. I think I gamed at 70, 80 frames per second back then on it. I think it was 76. At a 76 hertz display. I'd rather game at 60 on any modern GPU or on any modern game than that game at 76 because it was all over the freaking place.
Yeah, because 76 might mean 1 second it's 90, the next second it's 45.
Yeah. Hayabu writes in, does the end of Xbox exclusivity have to mean the end of Xbox consoles in general? I know Phil is locked in a dungeon right now, but can't Microsoft just reduce the hardware team to be smaller and do limited launches? I recall that you proposed for Sony to do some smaller limited runs on PSP as a niche item a while back, so maybe something like that. I can't remember the exact details anymore. It was months ago. Oh, so my initial response was I don't know what he's referencing, but I'm now remembering. I think he's referencing my idea for a PS6 portable, just literally being a PS6 with components disabled and then clocked lower, and you're just expecting it to run at half the resolution and half the time. That should work. The beauty of that being they don't need to design two handhelds. And also, if the handheld doesn't sell well, it's literally just a PS6. So software support would remain, and it'd become kind of a collector's item. That's really cool that they could do limited runs of, or maybe stockpile disabled yields, like the 20% of bad yields, just stockpile those, and every couple of years do a release of the ones they stockpiled for the handheld version. That's different than what you're talking about here. Why can't Microsoft just do a limited runs? Like the cost is making it, and Sony's going to make a PS6. So doing sub variants that use the same die would cost relatively little. Spinning up the whole operation is the problem.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that completely makes sense. And like with the PSP, I mean, it might be like
PSP
if they were
too.
to do if they were to do a new PSP or do a new run of like the old PSPs, that would probably be expensive
It'd be very
to do
expensive. It'd be stupid.
They would. I mean, one is the node that was built on.
Well,
made
you
on
could
even
no,
there
but
anymore.
The point just is like
you would take some designing is all I'm saying.
No, but like that's why it has to use a PS6 or
yeah.
It doesn't have to. There are rumors they're going to have a smaller die for the handheld for the PlayStation 6, but Sony can afford to do that because they believe it will sell, right? And again, this idea of Microsoft doing limited releases, no, it needs to sell 40, 50 million for it to make any sense. And this gets me into my thing here. Yeah, look, it sounds like they're making more consoles. There's going to be at least one more generation, but I still think they're going to have a big issue because they don't have a gimmick or exclusives. Like I know that we can say, oh, exclusives aren't a big deal for Sony. Right, but Sony's the dominant player. Sony is the dominant one. They don't need exclusives. People are going to buy PlayStation by default, and the PlayStation 5 has outperformed the Series X overall in graphics as well. So why would you get the other PlayStation 5 without exclusives? You would say Game Pass, but Game Pass is on PC, and they don't have any gimmicks. The Switch has little features, the Wii had features, and Nintendo has exclusives. if you're just another, there's not a room in a market for multiple of the same product. One niche will be, it's like evolution. One niche
Yeah.
will be occupied. It's
Once,
very rare when you
yeah.
have hyenas and lions occupying the same niche. It's very rare. And so it's really not natural for Xbox to survive unless they have a gimmick people care about. But Game Pass flopped, and they are getting rid, they're not even just getting rid of exclusives. They're like running ads saying don't buy an Xbox. Like,
Yeah, a limited release thing. All I could imagine that possibly being is like they deal partnership with like an OEM or something to do an Xbox branded run of PCs, but that's very different.
mhm.
And also think that would be kind of stupid to do. But
Sounds like they probably will. I guess I don't know. I haven't really followed up with anybody on it. Maverick writes in, "Hey Tom, just wanted to see if you knew the fate of AM4 CPUs like the 5700 X3D. B&H shows it has discontinued, and other sites don't carry it at the moment except third-party vendors. I thought I mentioned this in a podcast that I was told, and I kind of made it a leak that they are discontinuing this. So all I know is the 5800 X3D was phased out, and I leaked that it was going to be. And that was because the 5700 X3 required way cheaper validation equipment to bin them. And basically all yields get hit it, so they didn't have to worry about validation. So if the 5700 X3D is being phased out, I'd have to assume they're just kind of phasing out Zen 3 in general now.
yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. Like, at least I'm looking at it on Newegg right now, and Newegg isn't suggesting it's end of life, or as far as I can tell. But I mean, at a certain point, it's going to be end of life. It's 2 generations old.
Yeah, it's getting really old. And then there's the 5500 X3D. Oh no, yeah, but that's not that. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't have
Eh,
much to say.
yeah, I guess the AMD store on Amazon, like that through the AMD store is like there's there's no features available anymore from AMD.
So
So
these are just
you're
other.
buying it. Yeah, so you're buying it through other sellers now.
Yeah, so it does seem like it's being
Yeah, so it
phased
might
out.
be end of life. Yeah.
Well, and think about where we're going with this. I mean, AM5 motherboards are getting cheaper and cheaper. I mean, look, the 5700 X3D really isn't as fast as even a 9700 or 90 or 7700 that comes with a cooler. I think AMD is just slowly getting to the point where it's like, yeah, look, we're where we need to be, where we don't need to worry about AM4 for that much longer. DDR4 prices are going up. You've had years to get an X3D chip for your AM4 system. And if you haven't by
Mhm.
now, we're getting to the third gen of AM5. It's going to start being phased out. I don't think that should
Yeah.
surprise anyone.
No, and you can still buy it. It's just might not be there for that much
You
longer.
might want to get it now if you were waiting to upgrade to that.
Planning on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were planning to upgrade from your R5 1600 from 2017 today, wow.
Or, maybe just upgrade to AM5 at this point because
I
the
would generally
motherboard might be on
recommend
its
that.
last legs.
Hey, I've got mine from 2019, still running strong, zero issues. But I do plan to upgrade to Zen 6 probably. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the show. Dan, I want to thank you for coming on. Let me do the spiel. Remember to subscribe to Moore's Law Z on the YouTube channel. Ring the bell button. A lot of links coming out soon about Zen 6 and actually later and other products from AMD. A lot of excited stuff that we are working on too for like Radeon and Blackwell stuff. Well, according to polling, you guys don't care about NVIDIA stuff that much anymore. So we'll see. But if there's something interesting from NVIDIA, I'm still going to want to talk about it. So again, make sure you support us on the YouTube channel. Half of you aren't subscribed. That really helps the algorithm and helps the channel grow in general if more subscribers join. And then, of course, also remember to subscribe to Moore's Law Z on Patreon. You'll get access to a new die shrink that just came out, hundreds of other die shrinks with interviews with guests, just videos without ads that come out every other week for patrons. There's a huge catalog there as well. And of course, you also get access to other weekly content as well. We cannot do this without our patrons. Remember, you're paying me. You're paying Dan here, who is nice to shave for you. So, I mean, give him something.
Yeah.
You're paying Carbon
Took me like
Cry
15 minutes.
in the Czech Republic, Gerard in Spain, and Jean Philippe in Canada. You're paying a pretty large team of people all over the world here. It's not just me. And we cannot do this without our patrons. Then, yeah, subscribe to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice to give us a review.
Good job. get talking real fast there at
I
the
did.
end.
I think I enunciated. Yeah, I know. I enunciated better there than I did with half of the frickin' openings. I mean, I don't know what's going on with me, guys. I'm sorry. I had to warm up and I was stumbling a little there, but the good news is the part of the podcast most people won't listen to. I sound perfect.
You found
now.
your
I
footing.
found my footing at the very end of the race. But anyways, again, though, no matter what, if you did make it this far, even if you're not a subscriber, thanks for watching this far into it to see me slowly melt down on camera. And yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing for those who do. And have a good week, everybody.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, CJS, Daniel D, Dink, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel Hyde, MJB1, GZ Ziggy, Toka, SNES Chalmers, Jem Verrier, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Gregor Sacker, Sarcastro, Chris Strick, Evan Dingle, Compressed AI Blocks, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Sammy Malas, Jordan Simkovic, The Boss Haas, Krzantine, Jonathan, Jake Dude 23, Neithrid Zink, Jake Martin, Slicky, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Travis Gooding, Gamers Unite, Mad, Zutsu Taylor, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cakes, Stephen Coates, Amiable Chief, Mark Mitchell, Tommy, Aisha, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Cole Addict, Cameron, Energy Zhang, Wesley Sager, Michelle Pell, Mai Sharona, Hexapuma, Win Wang, Reginald Ari, Teak Autumn, Winstar, Corey Leonard, James I. Radar, Little Germany, Jay, Milton, Melodic Warrior, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Jofit, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, Jansen Angima, Joseph Kelly, Slushba, Him Sagung, Tails 2299, Sisyphos 7771, Brian Wright, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Jeffrey Gentleman, Alex Vega, Dr. J Mad, Freedy, Michael Cozy, John Swim, Crystal Joe, Elbergun, Keekum, Solarized 80, Thalo 215, Sprutnik, Brian P, Hoodat 42, Cornster 671, Penta Went to Hell, Richard Omega Doge, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins, Love AI, Hugo, Ender Kiwi, Porcelain Oats, Curry King 3, Nick Zoosmania, State Farm Snake, Sakosha Rye, Hill Chi Bowls, Sheriff Lotfi, 37 by 73, Kevin Coots, Armand Vakatura, Callan, Reichel, Jonathan Harris, Smash Axley, and Angel of Cake. And of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.